Sarah Dorado. I run Vegan Atlas on Tumblr, as well as having an online training journal on Tumblr, Heavygan. But I'm going to cut right to the chase. No pleasantries, no introduction. If you want to know about me, you can check out my journal. There's a big bio and all of that stuff. Basically, Quaker Crunch is an experiment in finding out what works best for me in terms of pre-workout nutrition. Just like every area of fitness nutrition, it's widely contested and argued, and people think that they know what's best for everybody, when in reality it's all about individual preferences and results. And since I've never actually played with pre-workout nutrition, I figured it was time. The reason this is the case is because up until recently, I've done very well following intermittent fasting and not eating anything at all, performing fasted training or doing empty stomach training where I haven't eaten for roughly 3 or 4 hours beforehand. But there are a few factors that have kind of affected my performance in the gym and that have required me kind of to look at my program a little bit more closely and see what's going on with that. I now work a 40-hour work week that isn't set in its schedule, and therefore my lifting doesn't happen at the same time every day like it was when I was doing IF and doing fasted training or even empty stomach training. And because of that, lots of things are up in the air. I'm also lifting much heavier weight now than I was when I first started out. Not to say that I'm lifting, an exceptional amount, but a 50-pound squat is a lot different than a 170. So because of that, I kind of taken the last couple of weeks to see what it is about, how I perform every day in the gym and what factors have helped improve it, or if there's anything that has been affecting it other than pre-workout nutrition. And I've been sleeping more, I've been staying hydrated, all of the things that you're supposed to do. And then a couple of weeks ago, I happened to eat beforehand and actually felt like it improved my performance. I wouldn't say that it automatically made me, hit personal records and things like that, but it definitely helped my energy, as I've been dragging a lot recently about midway through my routines. So what I want to do with this is to figure out, what actually works best for me. Instead of just weighing in on the whole foods only, oatmeal, rice cakes, beans and rice, or, Pop-Tarts and Captain Crunch and what have you. Because I think that you can eat both or one or the other or whatever you want, if it fits your macros and it's what you like and it's what's available to you. But I want to know what works best for me. So what I'm doing for 1 to 2 weeks is eating only slow digesting carbohydrates, and then for 2 weeks only eating fast digesting carbohydrates. I think I'm going to do the fast first, as I had a pretty successful run to the grocery store today, but a little bit more on that later. And the reason that I decided to kind of document this experiment has a lot to do with the recent kind of backlash on if it fits your macros, as well as me wanting to address the issue of access to whole foods and healthy foods and fitness-oriented foods that some people don't have, which are, two issues that I'm pretty passionate about. The idea that fitness is about the individual. You have to figure out what works best for you with what you have access to and what you like. And I think that's a big issue that is kind of avoided when people want to argue about if it fits your macros, and also when people want to talk about fitness in general. Kind of something that I talked a lot about when I first started Vegan Atlas, this idea that, the only way you can be healthy is if you only eat health foods and you only do these things, and the only way you can see gains in the gym is if you do this X, Y, and Z. And, that's not the case. It's all really about knowing what you need, what you want to achieve, and then how to do it with what you have. So Quaker Crunch, the wheels started turning in my head about it. Using this opportunity to say, these are different options of achieving the same goal, and it's all about what you want to do. And before anybody, kind of starts shooting at my feet, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a personal trainer. This is an experiment on myself, but I also want to show people, these are ways you can do this. Just figure out what works best for you, like I'm doing. Maybe not necessarily putting a video up of it, online, but, same principle. And hopefully by the end of this little experiment, I'll have figured it out. Maybe some days I want to have sugary cereal. Maybe some days I want to have oatmeal. But if one actually, is more effective for me, that's what I'm going to stick with until it stops producing those results. And then the additional catch for this experiment is I will only be consuming foods that can be bought at big chain grocery stores, dollar stores, gas stations, or convenience stores. Meaning that people who can't walk into, say, a small independent health food store, even Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or anything like that, if they can't get this food at a corner store, I'm not going to eat it for the next few weeks. To show not only what people can't get a hold of, but also what you can do with the little that you do have. One of my main goals for starting Vegan Atlas was to educate or show people how to educate others on what it takes to achieve your fitness goals when you think you can't. Which is another reason that I think this goes well with the if it fits your macros debate. Because there has been some serious demonizing of people who do want to eat Captain Crunch or who want to eat a Pop-Tart or, want to eat ice cream. I mean, aside from the fact that some of these things aren't necessarily vegan, I don't see a problem with showing people how to be healthy with what they do have. Because the truth is, not everyone does have access to fresh fruit or vegetables or anything like that. Some people really can only buy their groceries from, the Family Dollar or Speedway or BP if they're lucky. Food deserts do exist. And maybe these people aren't necessarily, fitness minded, but they also are people who need to be educated on what it means to maintain some level of healthiness in their life. And if that means showing them that you can have one Pop-Tart instead of 4 Pop-Tarts to meet your caloric needs, then I think that's an improvement, as opposed to, just saying, buy these things you actually can't get to. But that's another tangent. So basically, that's the premise of Quaker Crunch. And to run through the fine details, basically, so there are a few variables in this experiment. I will be keeping my caloric needs and macro ratio the same throughout the entire endeavor, which is a little complicated since I do carb cycling on rest days for the sole fact that I don't feel like eating as much when I don't hit the gym, and I know that's mostly psychological because I'm consuming the same number of calories, but it's what works best for me. So basically, on days that I hit the gym, I will meet a minimum of 130 grams of protein and a maximum of 50 grams of fat, and then I will fill in the rest with carbohydrates. And then on rest days, I'll bump up protein just a little bit to roughly around 160 Gs, a minimum of 60 Gs of fat, but a maximum of 185, rest from carbohydrates. And then there are a couple of other instances that, things that occur in my day-to-day living that I will not be eliminating because, again, this is largely about me and what works best for me, and that I do drink. I drink once or twice a week, twice maximum, no more than, I would say, 6 to 10 drinks divided between those 2 days. And it's not something that I'm going to cut out. It's not like I'm going to schedule it into this experiment, but if it arises that my friends want to go out or I want to have a beer with my girlfriend or something like that, I'm going to do it. But in order to minimize its effects on the experiment, if I do not drink during the first half, I will not drink during the second half. And if I do drink during the first half of the experiment, I don't have to drink during the second one. If I feel as if it really did greatly affect my performance and will tweak the results of that next day's lifting session, I will write that day off and then add on an extra day with, the fast digesting carbohydrates. Because again, this is about me and what works best for me. So to completely isolate, that would be a bit silly. I'll also be drinking a minimum of 1 gallon of water every day that I lift, probably also on rest days. I have a little bit of a harder time with that. To maintain hydration, I will also be getting a minimum of 7 hours of sleep on nights before lifting, unless I have to close at work and then open, and then it's a little dodgy. But I will never go under 6 hours if I can absolutely help it. I want not only to improve that in general in my life, but also to make sure it doesn't affect this kind of like mini experiment. Also, about once a week, I go out to eat, and I don't really track my macros at all. I try and stay within my targets. I'm really good at estimating it. Only happens once a week, but every now and then my girlfriend and I want to go out to eat. We live relatively different schedules. Sometimes we go a few days without eating a meal together. Sometimes we're both tired of cooking separate meals. We want to go out. And that'll be the case. It usually falls on heavy leg day anyway, so I'm not too concerned about it. And again, this is about my pre-workout nutrition. But I know that sometimes, if I eat late at night, it's going to affect how I am in the morning, et cetera, et cetera. But basically, as few variables as possible. I'm going to try and consume the exact same amounts of carbohydrates and protein before working out, again, within that 25 to 40, probably towards the lower end of it, other than, my power days, which are 2 days a week, first 2 days in a cycle. But basically that's the premise. If you have any questions, concerns, if you think I'm an idiot, what have you, if you want to, suggest a vegan sugary cereal that I should try out, hit up my ask on Tumblr. It's veganalice.tumblr.com or heavyvegan.tumblr.com. And I will be starting this experiment Monday on my 7th week of following Layne Norton's fat on my lower body power day. So we'll see how it goes.